You start to look and prioritize, right? So like I was with a client today. And so part of that conversation was, okay, what are you focused on right now? And she's like, well, I want to get into more marketing. I want to find out my avenues in which I want to do this. I said, great, let's pull up chat. And I said, okay, so you want to be a guest on podcast. Well, let's find you the top 50 guests on podcast. Let's find out what you're doing here and then using AI to help you. But the funny thing about this is I couldn't have this conversation with her last week because that was her off week. Her brain wasn't functioning at its highest. She was going to push through trying to make something work because that's what she's been told she has to do. And so I waited on that conversation around marketing until I knew, and we had been talking about it, that, okay, you're now in a high cognitive, high creative state. This is where we can start talking about what is your plan and development for your marketing. Up until that point, in that moment, that conversation couldn't have happened any other time.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Katrina Van Oudheusden, creator of the Create Her method and founder of the Female Intelligence Cycle, who discovered something profound after building and closing 2 6-figure businesses due to exhaustion. What makes Katrina's work groundbreaking is her recognition that every growth framework women had been handed was still built on male architecture, designed for linear energy and constant output rather than how women actually think, lead, decide, and live. Katrina spent nearly 2 decades in digital marketing and business strategy, including running multi-million-dollar operations in the Disney ecosystem before creating the first business growth framework built entirely around the natural rhythm of female intelligence. Her work with successful women who look great on paper, but are quietly carrying businesses that only run when they do everything addresses a gap that no one had named or solved before. Welcome to the show, Katrina.
Thank you, Pedro. I'm excited to be here and with your audience. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a great conversation.
I'm excited that you're here, Katrina. And before we get into what you do now, I'm curious how this all actually started. So what was going on in your life when coaching became more than just an idea?
Actually, it's interesting. So my background is being a chef at Walt Disney World. So that's kind of what you brought into this. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was there for 13 years and I learned a lot about how Disney runs business. I think I was more fascinated with that. I started buying a lot of business books and trying to figure out how Disney kept customers coming back at $40,000 to $50,000 a year. And then how do you retain the employees that have such a passion to serve their customers? And so when I retired from the kitchen, I jumped into the world of digital marketing and I came on as a consultant for a company that I had known for a few years, was in transition, and they were struggling to teach digital marketing. So I said, what if I brought in that Disney belief or system or what I've been trained? How do we bring that into their world? So how do you teach people in the digital space to be customer oriented and also employee oriented in the background when you're working with a bunch of digital nomads? Everybody on our team wasn't in one space, wasn't even in the same state. So how do you do that? So that was the start of my coaching career. In terms of getting into this company and then saying, okay, I started to recognize certain patterns that were happening with their clients, where they were losing customers, where they could have improved the service. And with my years with them, we ended up building out their high-end mentorship program. So you talk about going from starting in the world of like, okay, I'm a digital marketer, but I don't know a heck of a lot of this, to bringing in an architect that was, producing multi-million-dollar revenue. I was like, holy crap, like this actually works. And so that was my first taste and real experience with coaching clients and their journey. So no matter whether they were coming into this company having made $0 or having made 6 and 7 figures already, I started to see that they were all having the same gap when it came to marketing.
Okay. So you left Disney, you were a chef, and then you went into something like a digital marketing industry. And in the middle of it, you found yourself in the coaching space, something like that.
Yeah.
I
So
got that right?
yeah. So when you have a company that's like, yeah, we have a coaching program, but we haven't defined it out. And so when they accidentally at a live event brought in a coaching corner and they sold their programs, and all of a sudden I am doing, I think the most I did, and I did this for about 9 months. So for the audiences listening, I do not recommend this at all. I was averaging anywhere between 60 to 70 clients a month. Yeah,
Wow.
building out the structure. So as I was coaching the clients, I was also building out the onboarding. How did our customer support now take care of onboarding somebody into our system? What did the year look like for them? How are we tracking this? How are we maintaining a level of showability or productivity for our clients and saying, yes, we can get you to this next level. So documenting that, creating that, and all of it all at the same time was like, get thrown into it and figure it out as you go.
Okay, interesting. Now I have a need to ask because it sounds like, and you correct me here if I'm wrong, okay, that you got into the digital marketing space and coaching was more like something that eventually was on your plate because you were trying to implement stuff and you're like, okay, I need to help them implement. And sometimes they're on their own way, right? My question to you is like, when did you realize you were wearing like a coaching hat? Hey, you know what? What's happening here? I thought I was in digital marketing. Now I'm a coach.
Yeah, I think when you start to want to help people and you're really invested in their success, that's when you really become a coach. And so in that journey, not only was I learning for myself and having built out my own brand in the background behind all of this. And one of the things that I was told early on from the mentors that I was working with was like, coaching's the easiest way to get into any business. If you can help somebody do something and you can charge $200 to $300 to get them through just to find out what coaching is about, that's the start. And then working with this company and seeing that grow to a significant multi-million-dollar revenue, I was like, holy crap, like I really enjoy breaking down the process, listening to how people are starting to design their business, and then supporting them on that journey, because that's really what I think is the joy of coaching, as then saying, hey, I'm not here just to tell you what to do. I'm here to listen for what you're already doing and then recommend and see where else we can pivot or what we need to shift or what we need to refine so that you don't feel overwhelmed in this process.
Okay. Okay. Once you were out there, right, helping people, who did you naturally end up attracting? I know I mentioned in the introduction women and all of that, but was that immediate? When did you realize, okay, these are the people I work best with?
No, because after that contract, I ended up starting my own coaching business. So I started teaching Pinterest marketing, which was an interesting, fascinating role to play in. So working with them in their digital marketing, taking it through that Pinterest process. And so I worked with men and women. I worked with everybody. And that was really interesting because you get to see who's taking action. And I will tell you this, to be honest, I spent more time with the female clients and with them in tears. Not so much with the men, but I had a lot of women that would come to me and say, I couldn't get what I needed done in this month. This isn't like, I feel like I'm just pushing a boulder up a hill. And so I started seeing with women, that was the transition. I'd been in these high, 6, 7, 8-figure masterminds. And they talk about productivity and they talk about all these things. And I would just watch women fall apart and say, I could try this and it just wasn't working. So in answer to your question, what ended up evolving is about 5 years ago, I looked up from everything and I saw women gone, like incredible women doing extraordinary businesses, and they weren't there anymore. They had disappeared from media. And to be honest, Pedro, this conversation hasn't stopped. I was talking with the lady that's doing, working with 7 to 8-figure women. And I said, are they still there? And she goes, shockingly, no. She's like, I've had some women that have done extraordinary success that don't stay around. So that for me was recognizing one of the biggest gaps is there's something missing in how we're teaching women how to run a business, even for myself, that needed to be addressed. So I would say that over time, it became female focused, but it wasn't the original intent. I never thought that this would become my pathway.
Okay, something that I want to ask you, like, do you feel by any chance that you're serving past Katrina in a way that you're like, created in some way, to an extent, you resonated with them. Of course, the gender, same gender, but I'm like, oh, I know where you were, I feel it, or this is nothing at all like that.
No, I would say that that's kind of what we end up doing in coaching. A lot of us, especially for us women, is that we tend to find there's the gap for us, and that's what we tend to serve. So whether it's a breakdown or a breakthrough, I think that's where we coach from, because that is, we're talking to our former self. Absolutely. I think in any coach, when you get started, you're talking to where you were and the struggle you had, and you want to help people coach through it because you had your breakthrough and you want more people to experience that for themselves. And I think that's really where the passion for coaching comes into play.
Okay. Now, let's pretend I'm your ICP, okay? Your ideal client profile, the avatar, I'm one of those women and all of that. So how would I eventually find my way to you in the first place today, marketing wise?
So today I talk to the women that have been there. That's usually the women that I'm working with. So the one that has been building her business and feels like nothing is working. She's doing everything she's been told to do. She's doing the marketing. She's doing the business. She's got everything done and still doesn't feel like there's a way forward, or she's moved forward. This is my other woman. So I actually have two, the one that's moving forward and the one that is so remarkable, wants to build a business, but doesn't want to do it the way she's been doing it. That doesn't serve her either. So it's kind of, she meets in the middle. And I think that's where I have that expertise, because I was at that 6-7 figure mark in my coaching business. I closed the door on that second company and that first company because I was like, I can't keep building this way and it feels inauthentic to me. And I don't know how to present something different. So in reality, it took me, and this is what I don't want for our women coaches out there, it took me 3 years to recover from the way that we've been taught to build coaching businesses. And I want to shorten that time span so that you have less burnout and less resistance to how you're scaling your business. Because for us women, oftentimes we're not just building a business, we're taking care of family, we're taking care of our parents, we're caregivers. We have a lot of other things that are happening in our life. And so to follow a model that doesn't always serve us and doesn't incorporate our lifestyle and what we're actually physically dealing with over here, has been one of the interesting things around this journey, because I've been there and I've recovered from it. And so that's where I coach from.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so let's pretend I saw your social media, or I'm not 100% sure where you post your socials or whatever that is, and I resonate with your message, right? Even if it's LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it, okay? And I'm like, you know what? Katrina seems pretty cool. I eventually got into the sales process, however that looks like, okay? So walk me through, I would say, the main offer, right? That you have, if you have more than one. How does that look like for me, a client that's being onboarded, and what should I expect from your business and considering outcomes?
So however you find me, it's typically going to be either podcasting or it's going to be through LinkedIn. So those are my two. I've actually stripped away all the other noise, because today, honestly, one avenue can produce all your leads and all your business. You don't need to be everywhere at once. That's very exhausting. So when you come through, you'll find me, you'll come to probably a landing page, or you'll end up on a call with me, some form, some fashion, and you'll go through and you'll fill out an application. And the application for me is pretty straightforward. It's, I want to know where you're at, what you're thinking, where you're feeling like where you're at in your business. Some questions you may not be able to answer, and that's okay. That's actually a good sign. And so once you come through that application process, we get on a call and we decide what were steps moving forward, if we're a good fit or not. I am not for every female out there. I totally understand that. You may not be ready for the conversations I'm going to have with you. And so that once you're in, we have a welcome call into Create Her Rewire, which is it's 4 months. So typically coaching is done in like 3 months, 6 months, whatever. What I found with women is that we need space to breathe in coaching and being consulted. So we work 3 weeks out of the 4 every month. We intentionally take a week off. So wherever you're at in your infradian rhythm, in your female intelligence rhythm and cycle, I give you time to pause, because I found that in doing so, I get the best version of you and we can make better decisions around your business and your money. So we are intentional. We've actually created a longer time span and instead of trying to condense and shorten everything. Everyone talks about getting there faster, but for women, slow is fast, or slowing down is fast. So you'll spend 4 months with me. and my CFO. So we actually build in the money conversation. So not only do you get the structure of your business and the refinement of your offer, but you also get the financial cash flow business training that is very much missing from the coaching industry. We focus on one specific thing. But as I found with coaches and with any client that I work with, I can teach you how to make the money. I can show you how to get the leads. But if you don't know how to sustain that income or you don't know where those dollars are going, you're going to be broke sooner rather than later. And you're going to end up feeding your business instead of your business feeding you. So we talk about pricing. We talk about your offer. We talk about all of that. And then we look at, okay, what else is going on in your life? How many clients do you actually need? What are your responsibilities beyond your business? Because that is super integral to the success, the longevity of a woman staying in business.
Okay. Interesting. Now, I usually at this point, I love to sometimes throw a curveball at the coaches because as you already know it, most coaches advocate against burnout and sometimes they burn out themselves,
No,
right? Because they're wearing all the hats and all that. But you have a unique story. You've been there, done that, right? You told me yourself that that model that you had for that 7-figure business didn't work out for you. So now I gotta ask you, from I would say not necessarily a advice point of view, but something that would be like a signal, a flag that you feel like, hey, maybe I'm burning myself out in my business. What would be something that you would tell to an early stage coach or someone that could potentially be, in the same spot you were in?
I think on that question, the warning signs and the flags, they're subtle for women because we've been tend to override our natural state. And so every time we push through and every time we say, I've got to get this done or I'm going to be behind, or we put more pressure on ourselves to perform, to prove that we can be in this arena, that we can make that money, that is what we're chasing. Those are all little signs and subtle signs. If your body is literally screaming at you and saying you need to rest, or you're getting sick often, those are trigger points. That is your body saying you can't keep up this level of productivity. Even with your team, you're holding on to too much. And so what I love working with, just a reminder to myself, right? Almost like if I had worked with a female coach, knowing what I know now, and if that coach never told me to take a day off, I'd question them being my coach, because that is one of the most critical things we don't teach anybody in the world of business, is that take that day off. Learn how to take a week out of your schedule and do absolutely nothing. Don't take a client call. Don't take a coaching call, and put that in every quarter. Figure out how to do that. Because if you're not taking that downtime, then your business is running you. You're not running your business.
It's like you're going to have to find a way, right? If you block the time, you're like, you better be efficient. It's like pretending you have, instead of 8 hours a day of work, you have 6. You had to find a way to make
Yeah.
it work, right?
Yeah. You start to look and prioritize, right? So like I was with a client today. And so part of that conversation was, okay, what are you focused on right now? And she's like, well, I want to get into more marketing. I want to find out my avenues in which I want to do this. I said, great, let's pull up chat. And I said, okay, so you want to be a guest on podcasts. Well, let's find you the top 50 guests on podcast. Let's find out what you're doing here and then using AI to help you. But the funny thing about this is I couldn't have this conversation with her last week because that was her off week. Her brain wasn't functioning at its highest. She was going to push through trying to make something work because that's what she's been told she has to do. And so I waited on that conversation around marketing until I knew, and we had been talking about it, that, okay, you're now in a high cognitive, high creative state. This is where we can start talking about what is your plan and development for your marketing. Up until that point, in that moment, that conversation couldn't have happened any other time. And that's, I think, one of the things around the red flags is that we think we have to be, and I love you guys for this, but you guys run on a 24-hour clock. Women run on a 28-day cycle. So 28 days versus 24 hours. Give yourself the room to breathe through, and it'll change not only how you coach, you'll get actually more clients. You'll close more people. You'll have a better rapport with the audience that you work with. You're going to have repeat customers because you're at your peak performance instead of trying to push through and end up hurting yourself and your client at the end of the day.
You know what? You're getting me to a rabbit hole because sometimes I'm like, and this might sound familiar to you since you went through it, right? It's like the feeling of guilt of not being productive. It's like, even if sometimes you block that time off and I'm with my kids or something like that, I'm like, my head is spinning, my gears are spinning, and I'm thinking about work. So, how to manage that? Because personally, I feel it, right? I'm a business owner too, I'm a podcast host, but the question to you is you've been there, you've done that, you went through the process. How do you keep that at bay so it doesn't come back, you know?
It's hard. I'm not going to say this is easy. It is super hard, Pedro. It isn't easy for any entrepreneur to schedule downtime because there is that sense of guilt. There's a sense that I could be more productive. There's something I need to push through. Here's what I'll challenge you with, even for you right now. When you spend time with your kids, Pedro, be present with them. That time that you have with them is a fleeting moment and you'll never get it back again. And when you start getting present to all the little moments of why you're building your business and who you're building it for, if you can't take time for that person and spend 30 minutes or an hour or even a day with them and make them your full priority, that's a red flag because business will always be there. And if you're in for the long game to change lives, to make an impact, then it's not the short game you're playing, it's the long game. And there's plenty of space to breathe if you play the long game. And I think that's the one thing that I would be on family vacations and I'd be sitting there trying to finish my blog post for that day, trying to get that email out before I could spend time with them. I was losing so much of my life to a business that eventually I ended up closing that wasn't serving me. And I began to resent the way I was building my business because the whole point, you and I are both entrepreneurs. Getting out in the world, we want flexibility and financial stability. But flexibility is about learning how to take that time and get really present in a day and say, you know what? Business isn't going to make or break or die if I don't show up today. But my kids are going to be impacted. My parents are going to be impacted. My friends are going to be impacted. They're going to wonder where I am. And if I wait until I make it to make time with them, I'm going to spend my whole life trying to figure out when to make it. Because making it, I don't care if you made $200 this week as a coach, you've made it. And that is worthy of celebration and taking time to celebrate that. But you're chasing the next goal. I've been there. I've been there chasing what I think is next, what I have to do better, what I need to prove myself for. Those things at the end of the day are what you'll hear millionaires and billionaires say is the most unfulfilling part of their lives. You'll hear that from athletes that say, I've made millions of dollars, but I have no life. I hear it from women that say, I've built these incredible businesses, but I don't know who I am. That is where we're missing in the journey. We're such in a rush to get somewhere that we're not present to actually what we're building. And I think when you sit back, Pedro, and you say, I'm spending time with my kids today, like, I'm going to reward myself and treat it as a reward. And I'm going to be fully present in their lives and show up as my best self for them so that they get to see that I'm not only a businessman, but I'm also a father, and vice versa for women. If we keep saying that we're going to push that off and wait until we are make enough money and then we'll take them on that trip, it's delayed gratification and you'll keep delaying gratification.
So basically, you're siding with my wife and I should drop the cell phone. That's what you're telling me. You got to be present, Pedro. Stop with the noise, right? I got that right?
Yeah. I mean, I've learned to actually turn off my notifications. I do get in some trouble with this because a lot of the times my phone, while it's near me, it lays face down and on silent. Because if I'm choosing to make the most of my time with somebody today, then they deserve my full attention. Notification isn't going to make or break. If somebody's got to wait 20 minutes or even a day to respond, I will tell you this, responding back a day later hasn't hurt my business.
Right. And sometimes there's that scarcity mindset of, oh, I'm going to lose a client if I don't respond to them in 5 minutes, right? You got that?
Yeah, but then you have grace, like, and you're on a coaching call with someone. So say someone's late to a call or they have to reschedule. Do you beat them up because they have to reschedule? Because they had a life? No, you give grace. Something happened. There's a tragedy in my family. We give grace. Well, we don't give ourselves that same grace. And that's where I push back and say, there's nothing on your phone that in the real world right now around you wouldn't change your life in a more profound way.
Okay. Love it. Now I want to shift gears for a second.
Yes, please.
I want to talk a little bit about future. So what's the direction you're aiming this business towards? You know, are you thinking more about growth, leverage, building a team, or refining what already works? You know, what feels most exciting right now, Katrina?
Honestly, I want to bring the Create Her method to more women as part of their coaching program, and eventually have men adopt it when they work with women. So you may not have the same reference, but as I work with women. So the Create Her method is going through certification. So we're certifying this for more coaches out there and consultants to bring this into this entrepreneurial space. So I'm excited, really excited about that because I've never done it before. So petrified, excited, and of course I have mentorship to help me with this because there's nothing worse than trying to figure this crap out all on your own. Hire somebody. All right. I will tell you that it's best. Your best bet is to have multiple coaches in multiple arenas supporting you in your growth. So the certification is a big one on our plate right now. And then continuing to serve. Yes, the team is going to continue to grow. All of that's going to happen. And for the first time, I'm excited about the growth of that and not scared that it's going to overwhelm or take over my life.
Okay. And even when things are going well, there's always something under construction. So what's the main thing you're actively working on or trying to improve in the business right now?
So the main thing I'm working on is cleaning up my email sequencing. For the love of all that, totally. You talk about automating email sequencing for outdated. Pedro's laughing, but I'm sure you guys have out there outdated lead magnets that have an email sequence that you can't doesn't even match your business anymore. So as a team, we're tackling and using a little bit of AI to clean up all the dead pages that are on our websites, things that we're no longer talking or serving. So that project is always under the hood. It is probably the least exciting part of the business. But Pedro, that you laughed a little when I talked about email sequencing. So I'm just curious why you're laughing.
Well, several reasons, right? Well, first of all, they keep changing the rules, right? And this is the part that I really think it's tricky. It's sometimes you're being flagged as spam or whatever because they change the rules and the link or whatever. And sometimes you're like, I got the good messaging. And then sometimes it's no, that's not going to work out because there's a keyword here that's not going to land. And that really stresses people, at least me, right?
Yes.
Am I off here?
No.
So that's one of the reasons I left. The second reason is because whenever someone tells me about AI, and I'm sure this is not your situation, but it's out there's a lot of AI slop, right? And they're and I was joking with my brother the other day. He's actually a PhD in data science, and he's got a startup business in AI here in Brazil. And we were joking about I imagine an analogy, right? A car dealership. And you're getting in and there's let's say it's Toyota, right? And the car salesman starts with, hey, this is not a Chevy. This is not a Volkswagen. This is just a Toyota. Who talks like that? So that always brings me back to the copy, right? I think there's so much AI slop copy out there. And whenever you bring out that, I'm immediately triggered. So sorry about my TED talk here,
you're
guys.
allowed to, because I think our audience needs to hear as coaches, email, come on, do not expect AI to write it for you. I said I need a framework and then I go in and I make it all my own. Because AI doesn't know my past experiences. It doesn't know my coaching clients. It doesn't know who I've worked with in the past. So, I use it as a frame, say this kind of the story, but it's all written by me. The junk in email, but the cleanup is the mess, Pedro. Okay. I've got lead magnets out there that I don't even use anymore. And I've got people, I'm going through my website. I'm crap, people are still clicking on this stuff and opting in and it goes nowhere. So the nowhere email automation list that you started when you first get into coaching. So, the layering as your business expands, you have these layers that you're trying to clean up underneath of it because you want to stay at the top where everything is finally converting. So I feel that's a never ending project. I feel every couple of years I'm going back in and updating an email sequence to bring people back in or getting in with the new messaging that we've shifted into.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what I feel and you can disagree with that. It's sometimes I feel coaches are wearing a lot of hats, and marketing is one of them. And I am right there with them. Okay, I feel their pain. But the thing is they're hearing in the social media that they need to be consistent, right? They need to put content out there. And sometimes the AI slop is just a coping mechanism because they want to keep the consistency going, but they're they don't have enough time to do it in a way that's really good or impactful. And they're just trying to post and they're just trying to make, getting to next week post or Mondays or Tuesdays or whatever. And I'm not sure if you agree with that, but I feel sometimes it's just putting content out there, not really taking a look at it.
Well, and I think that's where things shifted, right? I've been in the digital marketing space since 2006. So I saw us like growing with Facebook, and I don't know if I can swear on here or not.
You're allowed to it.
We put out
I'll allow it.
marketing back in the beginning because we were trying to get everybody on these social media platforms. So we as marketers did a great job of saying, hey, come out here and post every single day. Well, we had to post every single day. How else were we going to keep you on Facebook to sell to you, right? So you had this collective group of marketers constantly selling, having to show up every single day. We did that with every new platform, trying to generate people to come to this platform so we could sell you. Like marketers really do ruin everything. I love us, and I'm also part of the problem, right? Like I love myself and I hate myself at the same time for all the crap I put out there. And I acknowledge that. So one of the things I think is if you're looking at marketing nowadays, Pedro, I think it's not so much consistency in the timing. I think it's consistency in the quality.
For sure.
Like sit there literally and say, okay, I'm going to post twice a week. Give yourself some time to breathe because everything seems to be surfacing a little bit later. Right? Like I know if you guys are playing on LinkedIn, it surfaces like a week to like 3 weeks later. There's a post that comes up on my feed from somebody. I was like, well, this is weeks old now. I don't think everything is quite the instant response it used to be because you're here. They've trained us. 2020 put everybody on the freaking internet that they could possibly put on here. If you weren't on here before, you were going to get forced on anyhow. Like, here you go. Right? So I think in terms of what is consistency, I think you have to look at the platform and you got to choose just one. I honestly don't think you need to be on all freaking platforms nowadays. Like it doesn't serve your mental state. It doesn't serve your business because how can you freaking respond to all these different platforms and show up as the best form of yourself without putting, as you said, slop out there? Like, come on, peeps.
Yeah, I think it's like you did a step further, right? You mentioned consistency, but you're like, when I was framing, it was about volume because people have this misconception of consistency as volume and not quality, right? And they're like, oh, I need to post Tuesday. I gotta, hey, Chat GPT, what should I do? And then it comes and it's just not the hard truth and it's super edgy. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think you nailed it. It's about the quality content, and if you're not looking to post every week, dude, just do your thing, and go for one channel. You don't have to be everywhere because there are different metrics and different people that hang out there. Like for example, you mentioned Pinterest, right? That's mainly, and I could be wrong, for artists and people that are like more creators. So you don't have to be everywhere because people don't have your ICP potentially doesn't hang out everywhere, right?
And here's the thing. You've got enough. If you build a network on one platform, they know people on other platforms because your customers are pretty much everywhere because they're not learning to be in one place. They'll recommend you. They'll tell other people how they found you. I mean, it really doesn't have to be anything crazy. I mean, do you remember Clubhouse? Clubhouse, which was like the radio room thing. It was another app and everybody was over on Clubhouse and they would do these like drop-in speaker things. And I mean, people built multi-million-dollar coaching programs off of Clubhouse and it's still to this day focused primarily on Clubhouse, which is off my radar completely, but people are still using it to generate leads and build coaching programs. There's no wrong place to be. You just got to pick one of them.
Interesting. Especially coming from a marketer, right? I love it. Now, before we close this out, Katrina, if someone resonated with what you shared and wants to follow your work, where should they go?
So the easiest place to follow me is going to be at truthbombmarketing.com. That is the website of where we host everything. And then Katrina Van Oudheusden, I'm thinking it's been in the show notes. My name, that for LinkedIn are the two places that are going to be the easiest for you to find me. It's not that I'm hiding from social media anymore. I'm just being very particular about social media.
Okay. There were a few moments from this chat that really stood out to me. I would highlight them. Like, for example, the origin story, when you were like a Disney and you were a chef, right? And you're like, you know what? This is kind of cool. And natural curiosity gave you that first spark. And you went for it, So, and then later down the road, you're thinking about the legendary experience of a customer at Disney, right? Which is, a lot of books were written about it. We don't have to talk about that, but it's something that you're trying to replicate with your own practice. So I think that is pretty cool. Even though it's not, you mentioned the challenges, it's digital and all of that. So I understand the gaps there, but just trying to adapt that, I feel like it's pretty cool. And it chills a little bit. You have this high energy. I can sense it. This is like Disney. Everyone's so excited to be at, right? I love it. Now, another reminder, powerful one, is like when we were talking about the burnout, you were like, yeah, the body saying you can't keep at this level of productivity. I think that's a great one. I would add one to, like, this is mine. The boundary I set is when I see a lack of performance, because I'm like, oh my God, this is not doing well. I rather stop like doing, instead of, shitting out all over the place. So that's just mine. And I'm right there with you and cursing. Okay. So we're together on this. So no worries. And the last but not least is like, when you mentioned take intentional time off, like really do it and be present. So yeah, I'm gonna, hold my cell phone back a little bit more, put it on the cabinet, and just play with the kids. So thank you for that. I think the wife was right all along. Katrina, this is my long-winded way of saying that I really appreciate you taking the time and being open with this. Great having you on today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me here. And thank you for all of our listeners in the audience. And I definitely say, plug in, stay tuned, and continue to follow Pedro on this amazing podcast, because this is where we as coaches get to learn from each other. And I think that is critical as we move forward in any area of our journey, and especially being an entrepreneur. Don't do it alone, do it together.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.